Hello and welcome to another episode of What I Learned on my MBA today. Now, we're going to be doing something slightly different tonight, not just the camera angle, but also reflecting slightly differently on what I've been thinking about. We just finished the Managing People course today, and the last lecture of operations management is taking place first thing tomorrow morning, and that's quite shocking. This all happened quite fast. Now, interestingly, I got some good feedback from some of my cohort colleagues about these videos, and some of them were a bit concerned. This in that it looked like I was feeling fatigued and depressed doing these videos, and the reasons are actually quite fascinating. Partly because I'm reflecting on a lot of fairly negative experiences. Looking tired is, well, I think everyone's looking tired. I think any of us looking in the mirror at the moment would probably feel a bit that way. But we see recording as well. Midnight doesn't really help in that regard. But the negative experiences, I think it's one of those things. It's easier, maybe, to reflect on something that didn't go well, because that way you maybe have more of a learning experience. If it went well, you think, well, woohoo, that worked out. Things go badly, you think more of, well, how could we make this better so it doesn't happen again in the future? Or if it does, make it as good as it can possibly be, even if it's a negative thing. Let's at least make it less bad and be able to get something out of it. I always like to be able to do that. So, from that side, reflecting on a negative thing maybe makes sense. Equally, I think if my previous career had been all roses, then I probably wouldn't be doing a full-time MBA course. I'd probably have chosen to do a part-time type, continuing to work and also studying at the same time. It'd take longer. I don't think it'd be any less effort, frankly. From everything I hear, they're quite hectic courses. But yeah, the fact that I'm doing the full-time course does partly reflect, life situations, and there's been some hard things, and I try not to try not to dwell on, but also try not to hide the fact that I had some quite severe mental illness issues over the last year or so, and that this course is actually helping significantly in dealing with that. And most days I'm actually I think sometimes that I could do a what I learned today that's entirely how my own mind has worked, but a lot of those times I'm just not sure it'd be actually very interesting for people. But here's one for you. So a thing that has occurred to me during our group work, and also from the MBA course in my wider life, I've noticed that I have a definite fear of feeling excluded. Now, I think this is one of those things that stems back to fairly early childhood, when we first go to school and we're all a bit weird, and you get the people who can fit in easily and people who maybe don't fit in quite as easily. And so we very quickly get socialised, and socialisation is a very, very interesting subject, and one I'm going to be talking more about in the next few days. We get socialised into these particular, I suppose, kind of phobias isn't quite the right word, but certain concerns. I think these become very deep-seated emotional drivers. So I think for me that is one, and actually realising through this course that that's something that's affecting me, I can now start working on it. So we did this strength scope, skills. Is it quite skills? Strength scope looks at 20-odd different aspects of your personality and identifies what you feel energized by. Now, energized doesn't mean good at. You can be really bad at something, but have a really high strength scope score because it's something that you just derive great positive energy from doing. Now, some of mine you'd not be surprised to hear things like critical thinking, very high, but I was surprised to see courage. Now, obviously things like optimism I was very low in. Now, courage is an interesting one, because one of my mid-range things is emotional resilience. And this is actually a case where I think it's not only that it's something that I find maybe a little bit tiring, but also something I maybe haven't developed quite as much as I could have. So essentially it's a weird combination of manifestations. I really enjoy taking this very critical, very out there, controversial view, but struggle to deal with then the consequences of that in terms of the response from people around me. So I'm really looking forward to working on both harnessing the courage effectively and really developing emotional resilience to be able to actually handle essentially the consequences of my own actions. And that's all been brought out actually by some of the otherwise quite confusing elements of the Managing People course. Things around motivation and reward theory. As you saw last week, I was feeling quite down about some of that stuff. It was really the hard side of HR, if you like, that wasn't making me feel great. But what came out of that was this real understanding that actually this is the thing that is actually going on in my head, and that's then linking through to why I'm reacting a certain way to these different stimuli. So that I thought was quite fascinating. And also, if we're talking positive, let's talk about something really positive, which is what exactly is business for? So, for, as in, what's the purpose? Why are we here? Why do we do this? Because, frankly, you could look at a lot of the things that I've said and say, what kind of quasi-Marxist are you? Why are you even doing an MBA course when you don't really seem to follow a lot of these capitalist views? Which is an interesting question in itself and is probably worthy of a much bigger answer I'm going to give it here. But actually, I have a feeling that although I'm thinking of Heath Ledger's Joker now, I'm not insane, I'm ahead of the curve. As it goes, it's one of those things, maybe not the most encouraging things to hear, but I think if you look at economists, serious economists like Piketty and a few others at the moment, this is not that unusual a thought to be having. Why do we run these businesses? How should we actually reward people? How should we motivate people? How should we treat employees? And how should we see our links to broader society? And I was talking to a colleague this morning who raised a very good point, which was, what is an appropriate, how do you put it, profit margin or level of profitability for a business to have? Now, this I think really is the core question, and I'd love to know if anyone's got any good research on that, because we were discussing it and we can't really think of any. Essentially, you're dealing with something that's going to be in the middle of a couple of different areas. You've got the extreme Gordon Gekko Wolf of Wall Street profitability. It's all about shareholder value. It's all about getting the most money, return on your money for the shareholders. And at the other end of that, you've got your kind of socialist collective type idea, cooperatives, where everything's actually owned by the people who run it. There's essentially not actually a profit, because any profit is driven back into the business. And there you're actually dealing with no external money flows at all. So those, I would say, are probably the two extremes. Now, personally, the way I see these things is that I would always argue that a business exists first and foremost to provide a service or product to customers. Because if you don't have customers who are willing to basically part with money in exchange for what you're offering, I don't think you have a business. Now, in terms of profitability, that would imply that what you need to raise is enough money to keep that business running. So you do need, obviously, profit. You need to have the money to pay your staff. You need money to invest in your R&D expenses. That's because obviously if it's about product or service, you need to keep that absolutely as good as you can get it. And then that you're going to need to raise enough profit to keep people happy. And shareholders are a very valid and valuable way of raising capital and securing investment for a business. And so giving them some kind of payout is obviously part of that deal. The point is, where do you draw the line? Because you can draw that line so far, let's say down that Gordon Gekko side, that you look at the whole business. The customers are just a pesky annoyance. Your staff are just a cost. Your R&D is a cost. Yeah, all that revenue generating activity is seen as a cost and getting in the way of the purpose of the business in their situation being to provide the shareholders with a return. Now, equally, down the collective end, you might say that all of that the profit that giving, whether it's salaries, or investment, or shareholder dividends, that's all wasted money that could be driven back into some aspect of the business. So there's no right or wrong in this. I mean, there never is, and I think that's one of the things I do find really fascinating. I come from a background in politics, and I love how politics and business actually meet, and the political. So politics being, you've got the art of the possible. You've got a way of getting people to do something they wouldn't otherwise have done. So the application of political theories and to business and business theories to politics is a very, very interesting area, which I don't want to go into too much because it will bore you, because I'm geeky. But you do need to make this choice, and this comes down to values. I think that's really where, I mean, we talk a lot these days about corporate values. I think that's really what it comes down to, is where do we draw the line? Now, if you look at some stuff we've learned in operations management, you're dealing with trade-offs between quality, cost, reliability, dependability, how good your product is, how much it costs, how profitable your business is going to be. These are trade-offs that every business has to make, and the really interesting question is always where you draw the line, where you get to the point where you say, no, even though this trade-off would make our business run better, what we would be sacrificing at that point is actually the essence of our business. And so that's something I really, really want to get people to actually think about. What's a business for? What's it really being run to achieve? And how much profit, how much investment is actually needed? Not desired, because desired, obviously you always want to put 100% into everything, and it doesn't work that way because you've only got 100% and usually more than one thing that you could put it into. But getting people to really understand that aspect of what your choices are, and what they mean and what they say about what you believe, and how that then follows through into all your other aspects of organisational culture and how you run the place. Isn't that just fascinating? I think it is. And that's where I'd like to leave you for tonight. So I hope this has been an interesting and positive what I learned on my MBA today. It certainly has been for me. I feel great about having done this video. And so thank you very much for all that feedback, because this has been great fun to record, and should be doing more like it in the future. Thank you very much. I shall be seeing you.